tank-approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to The Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a weekend. Lots of bullets flying in the air. Hey, it's going to be summertime. The 201st mass shooting. We've had 201 mass shootings. I guess pandemic's over. I guess that would be the message. That we're back. This is... I'm guessing this is crazy town. And what are we getting? Well, like we get with every shooting, thoughts and prayers. No policy. No. Hey, we're gonna do something. No. None of that. Just thoughts and prayers. And more deference to guns. Because again, it's not the guns that kill people. Remember, and this is my NRA friends telling me this all the time. Guns don't kill people, Rick. People do. But again, gun helps. It's a lot easier to kill a bunch of people when you've got the gun. And the big story over the weekend clearly was the 18-year-old kid who walked into a supermarket in a black neighborhood and decided that he was going to shoot the place up. Decided he was going to live stream it on Twitch, so all of the other crazy white supremacist morons could see exactly. And here's the weird part of all of this. Again, this is not surprised by it. I mean, this is white supremacy at its worst. This is, having this kind of, white nationalism jammed down our throats. We'll talk about grooming in a moment, but this is scary stuff. And idiocy. The argument of the great replacement theory folks, the white replacement theory, folks, is that, we're bringing in all of the others. And again, this is to keep white people angry and on edge and, pitted against everyone. Because if you remember last election, the whole CRT thing, the whole theory about race that's critical, thing that got Youngkin elected in Virginia and all of that, it's all about scaring Whitey. And they did. They scared Whitey. The white suburban soccer moms, the security moms, scared to death that their little angels might actually, learn something. It's terrible. But we never hear about the white replacement theory that's being jammed down their throats. And you go, but Rick, what's this? What is this thing you speak? It's what the right has been pushing for decades. This isn't new. So this nitwit gets a gun, 18 years old, decides he's going to go shoot up this supermarket of people who just want to, just do another daily chore, grab some groceries, take home to their family. No, not on this day, because he wrote a 180-page manifesto. And I got to wonder if any of his teachers thought it was capable, this kid would have been capable of writing 180 pages, because you look at him, doesn't look like much, looks like a loser to me. Looks like someone who would be taken in by the extreme right wing and the message that the reason your life is not going to be all that is because of those people. It's not that you're a moron, not that you're not particularly interesting. I mean, the other part of this is they're arguing that the others are out procreating. The weird part of this is an 18-year-old, wouldn't the argument of, the other side's out procreating us, maybe, hey, pick it up? Maybe that sounds a lot more fun. maybe we should go out and spread the word, spread the seed a little bit, populate with people who look like, kind of. That sounds a lot more fun than going and shooting up a place, spending the rest of my life in jail or being killed. Oh, wait a minute. He was never going to be killed because he's a white kid. It's amazing how we never take them out. In fact, Dylan Roof, the shooter from South Carolina, we took him to Burger King. This kid went with the intention of killing as many black people as possible. And in fact, there's a video going around on the Twitters where he turns the gun on a white guy laying on the ground, and he's like, "Oh, sorry," and walks on. This wasn't about killing as many people as possible. This was about killing as many black people as possible. But Rick, we don't have a race problem. The right they don't see color. They're living Dr. King's dream of, who am I kidding? Now understand what the far right ideology of replacement theory, the Steve Bannons of the world keep pushing. The Republican Party has been pushing for a very long time. This idea that we're bringing in all these others, the non-whites, and we're promoting them to have children so that we can you'll limit the power of white people politically and culturally. We're going to take over and we're going to change everything. And you white people, you're just going to have to like it, which is kind of weird and fearful. And this is what happens when you have diminished opportunities. And again, this comes back to the limited economic opportunities that people across this country have had. It's the Hunger Games at the next step. But this is what the right-wing media has been feeding people. It's the outrage candy. They've been shoving down, these chaos merchants like Tucker Carlson have been shoving down people's throats. In fact, someone did a story where Tucker Carlson back in 2018 opined. Of course, all of them. Here's what Tucker had to say. How precisely is diversity our strength? Since you've made this our new national motto, please be specific as you explain it. Can you think, for example, of other institutions such as, I don't know, marriage or military units in which the less people have in common, the more cohesive they are? Do you get along better with your neighbors or coworkers if you can't understand each other and share no common values? This is to say that they don't speak they don't speak your language. They're different. You look at this kid's 180-page manifesto. They put out a little clip of it. He asked the same question. Why is diversity the greatest strength? Does anyone ask why? Yeah, Tucker, that's how you got it in your head, kid. The right-wing media has been jamming this down your throat probably since you were a little kid. He says this idiot goes on to say it's spoken like a mantra and repeated ad infinitum. Diversity is our greatest strength. Diversity is our greatest strength. Said throughout the media, spoken by politicians, educators, celebrities, but no one ever seems to give a reason why. This is craziness speaking. This is fear. This is anger. And I love how the media kind of lone wolf. This kid wasn't a lone wolf. This kid was groomed. This kid was put into this position. This kid was the result of a media culture, a right-wing culture that groomed this kid. Go to any right-wing website. Go to any of them. And it is wall-to-wall gun porn. It's wall-to-wall macho gun porn. You look at our politicians like Lauren Boebert and Thomas Massey with their Christmas-style clothing and their gun fetish. I remember looking at Boebert's Christmas card picture. And there they are, all the kids with, young kids, sporting their guns. And you go, is this what the goal is? To create these kind of hate mongers that are going to perpetrate these kind of hateful crimes? I look at Thomas Massey, the congressman from Kentucky, with his single shot M60. I mean, it's this giant gun he's holding. Everyone else has got the good old AR-15s, but he's got this single shot M60. It's a massive Looks manly. Looks manly. But for him, it's nothing but a giant sex toy. It's like his inflatable woman. It's grotesque. But that's the culture. It's how they're grooming their children to be Christian warriors. To be warriors for the faith, for the ideology. This is scary. Because this is meant to keep us pitted against each other. This is meant to keep us hating each other so that we never come together. We never get an America that gives us opportunities. That never get an America where we can go as far as our talents take us, where we never get to share in the wealth that we create. And what they do so well is they continue to tear us apart. I mean, I look at Tom Cotton. He's got a new book coming out, the senator from Arkansas. You know, Obama and Biden, you know, they've weakened America. They've emboldened our enemies. They've sabotaged America. This kind of hate rhetoric. And look, you know, they know it's BS. They know they're just selling books. They know they're just getting attention. But these idiot 18-year-olds, I would argue that, you know, my original premise of it's a lot more fun to repopulate. If your argument is there aren't enough white people, go out and repopulate. The reason is that you look at this kid, fortunately, there was no woman willing to repopulate with him. And I think that's a big part of the problem. Take a shower, clean yourself up, get a future. Maybe you got a chance. But you look at these people, and it's frightening. Because while the leaders, they know what the game is. These people, well, I think George Carlin said it best. You know, imagine, you know, imagine how stupid the average person is, and then realize that half the people are dumber than that. This is what we've got. This is the scary moment. And over this weekend, this wasn't the only shooting. You had multiple people shot in Laguna Woods, California, at a church. A Chinese guy shooting Taiwanese people. So the message there is, hey, if you want to kill people, come to America. You know, we'll give you guns and it'll be pretty easy. We saw multiple shootings in Wisconsin after the Bucks game. In Texas, Houston at a flea market. You know, we see them in Chicago. Shootings all over the place. And I argue it comes back to lack of opportunity, lack of hope, lack of direction for a country because of the mass inequality that we're suffering. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is one of these moments where Democrats get your head out of the sand. You want an issue? This is every word out of your mouth should be the right is the party of white replacement theory. The grievance party, this is who they are. This is not a single one-off. This is what they promote. This is who they're grooming. For me, it's that simple. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, more to get to. Also, your thoughts. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast. Always there, always available. Subscribe, share, comment, all of that. Quick break, right back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Linda sent me an email during the break sending me this Rolling Stone article saying just what I was saying. You know, this isn't a lone wolf. This isn't a one-off. This is the mainstream Republican Party. And thank you for the email, Linda. No, this is exactly who the Republicans are grooming. This is exactly who they are. They don't get to run from this anymore. There's no more, hey, thoughts and prayers. No. We need action in this moment. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Frustrated, angry.
I know the feeling. You know, what I wanted to say was Americans, for the most part, we are extremely ignorant, not only of our own American history, but of history, period. And the thing is, this great replacement theory and all these other conspiracy nonsense, the Democrats eating babies and the whole these have all been used for over 1,500 years.
Yep.
Only before it was the Jews. It was the Jewish people. And they just keep recycling over and over, and they just replace it with the traditional, with the new other person. It's what they do. And the Republicans, the Republicans, the evangelical so-called Christians, they are wondrous at pushing lies and propaganda, which kind of cracks me up since one is supposed to be the party of family values, which, by the way, the Charles Manson family had better values, and the other ones are not supposed to lie or bear false witness, but yet they do it.
Yep. And they're the pro-life party as well. Let's not forget that.
Oh, no, by all means, pro-life. No, but, it's just ridiculous. And I want to put this one little thing in there for your viewers, your little right-wing viewers, like that little Jeff that was listening and wrote you the email that was just ridiculous. Listen, honey, you little boys out there, most women like a man who has an IQ that is bigger than their waist size. So mayhap if you clean yourself up and study a little bit, you'll find yourself a girl instead of being an incel.
There you go.
So have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Alice. I appreciate it. No, that's the answer right there. I think if he had had an opportunity, maybe who knows? We'll see. Here's an interesting story. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, signed a piece of legislation that'll make protesting outside a person's home illegal. I know where this is coming from. Since the leaked memo from the Supreme Court that will inevitably overturn Roe versus Wade, some folks went out and protested in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house very peacefully. You had some people dress up in handmaidens costumes and march around in front of Amy Covid Barrett's house. You had someone put chalk on the sidewalk in front of Senator Susan Collins' house. She was very upset about that. Well, they have now passed a law outlawing that. It is now illegal to protest out in front of someone's house. Now, understand, when the crazy right wing were out in front of doctors' homes who work at women's clinics, they were looked on as brave. But going to the Supreme Court justice's home, that's too far. Remember, blowing up a clinic and killing doctors. Just blowing off steam. The other part of this is also opening, or more likely closing, a door on workers grabbing their pitchforks and marching to the CEO's humble multi-million-dollar abodes across this country. As you saw the story over the weekend, that CEO pay has risen to $14.7 million. And you go, why are we not surprised? The sixth straight record year for compensation for our CEO friends. In fact, 9 CEOs are making in excess of $50 million a year. But hey, can't raise that minimum wage, that pesky $7.25 an hour minimum wage. Nope, can't do that at all. Bad. In fact, median salary for our CEO class, $4.1 million. And you go, exactly what are we doing? Oh yeah, we're making the wealthy wealthier while the working class is getting stiffed. And yet all the messaging we hear, and this is brilliant. The right wing and their outrage machine. I look at the baby formula thing. This is something people should be marching to CEOs' homes over. But we're blaming Biden for it. And it's ridiculous that it's Biden's fault. All of this inflation pointing at Biden is ridiculous. But it got me thinking today. Do you know who's never made a can of baby formula? Our government. Joe Biden has never made a can of baby formula. And I'm okay with that. As much as I think our government should do in making people's lives better, things that we should do to get done, making baby formula not part of the idea or the plan. Nope, not at all. And it's amazing to me how stupid the right-wing spin machine knows their audience is, because they are. And like I said, the old Carlin line, think of how stupid the average person is and then realize half of them are stupider than that. And this is where the F channel and all of the right-wing blather machine, this is where they live. They live in that world where we know, well, the Trump line. I love the poorly educated, because we can, if we feed them the outrage candy enough and give them a boogeyman, give them someone to be outraged over, that's where they can focus. And then we can fleece them. We can rob them blind. We can get them to buy our, look, Biden did this stickers and have them slap them all over the place. We can get them to buy our T-shirts and our hats and all of our garbage, because they think, oh, we're fighting the good fight, when really all they're doing is screwing themselves and the rest of us by dividing us and pitting us against each other and not focusing on the real problem, which is these CEOs and the policies that are being shoved down our throat by corporate lobbyists. Consolidation is our biggest problem. Mass inequality is our biggest problem. Corporate dominance, that's our problem. And the sooner we wake up to each other as the solution, the better off we're going to be. The sooner that we can stand together and go, you know what? No, you're not the problem. No, you're not the problem. You may look a little different. You may sound a little different. You may be from somewhere else, but you're not the problem. That white guy in the corner office making the $14 gazillion a year, that's the problem. The guy who's paying the lobbyists millions of dollars to buy our political system, that's the problem. And the sooner we fight back to that, the sooner we get out of this eating each other, the sooner we can finally do what needs to be done. And that's break out the barbecue, break out the pitchforks, and all we got to do is eat one of the rich. That's all. Not all of them, just one. And we start taxing them at an appropriate rate. We go after corporate America and break up these big conglomerates. The fact that 4 companies control 90% of the baby formula industry in this country is ridiculous. But that's our reality. It's ain't Biden's fault. It's consolidation. It's capitalism. That's the problem. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day Minneapolis Teamsters walked off the job. It was an historic strike that coincided with the pivotal Toledo Autolite and West Coast waterfront strikes. Local Teamsters, many of whom later founded the Socialist Workers' Party, had been riding a wave of success, having organized the coal yards in February. Especially important was the development of the cruising picket squad. It became a standard in later CIO battles. That spring, union leaders were determined to organize all the truck drivers and warehouse workers in Minneapolis. By May, Local 574 had over 5,000 members. The trucking bosses refused to deal with the union, and so they walked. The flying pickets toured the city and shut down all trucking. Strikers enlisted the support of the unemployed councils. They also provided the structure for a women's auxiliary that produced important strike literature and bulletins, ran soup kitchens that fed thousands of strikers daily, fought scabs and police on the picket lines, and drove picket trucks. Historian Brian Palmer, author of Revolutionary Teamsters, the Minneapolis Trucker Strike of 1934, notes that strike leaders looked to the example of the Illinois Progressive Miners of America when it came to building the women's auxiliary. They too sought to make women an integral part of the strike, thus encroaching on the male world of waged work. Strike headquarters were established, and as Palmer describes, was a beehive of activity on the eve of the strike as union carpenters and plumbers installed stoves, sinks, and serving counters. Union electricians installed communication wiring. Donations of money, food, vehicles, and gas rolled in as the strike revved up. Local 574 was poised to make Minneapolis a union town. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Mitch McConnell, the sour old goose who heads the Senate Republican caucus, had a hissy fit when the news leaked out that American women are about to have their most fundamental constitutional right taken from them by a cabal of Supreme Court judges. What made Mitch twitch, of course, was not the bad news for women, but the leak. He huffed that revealing the right-wing court's scheme to the public was a stunning breach, spewing that it's an attack on the independence of the Supreme Court. Mitch, the so-called Supremes have been meeting behind closed doors specifically to plot an all-out attack on the independence of some 170 million women to control their own bodies. Why aren't you opposing the secrecy rather than supporting the court's subversion of women's liberty? Perversely, the entire Republican leadership is outraged by the leak rather than the attack on women. Right-wing blowhard Ted Cruz, for example, yapped that informing the public, quote, will do lasting damage to the integrity of the court. Ted, you and your ideological ilk annihilated the court's integrity and its legitimacy when you stacked it with a covey of corporate-coddling partisan hacks like Alito, Barrett, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Then came Senator Mike Lee of Utah, a Trump acolyte, ludicrously blathering that the leak of the judicial plan is despicable. Why? Well, he explained to us commoners, the court, quote, is not a political body. If ignorance is bliss, Mike must be ecstatic. The GOP majority on this court is so immersed in its own partisan biases that it is routinely ruling against workers, the environment, women, voting rights, local communities, and democracy itself. This is Jim Hightower saying, no surprise then that the public trust in the integrity of these arbiters of justice is crashing. If the court won't respect our democratic ideals, the people won't respect the court.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a little back and forth between the president and, well, I guess this was between Jeff Bezos and the president, because the president put out a tweet on inflation and getting the likes of corporate America to pay their fair share. His tweet was, you want to bring down inflation? Let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share. Something I've tweeted out, something I've said probably 1,000 times. We should be raising taxes on the very wealthy, not on the working class. I believe in redistributive policies. If corporate America has never been doing better, maybe it's time for them to kick in a little bit to help those who are struggling in this moment, to which Jeff Bezos, I guess, couldn't help himself. He tweeted back, the newly created Disinformation Board should review this tweet, or maybe they need to form a new non-sequitur board instead. Raising corp taxes is fine to discuss. Taming inflation is critical to discuss. Mushing them together is just misdirection. I don't know. I don't think I agree. And here to give some thoughts on whether it's fair to put them together or if Bezos is right, I've asked our good friend Matthew Gardner to come talk with us. Matthew's a senior fellow at the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. Their website, itep.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out the work that they do. Matthew, thanks for taking time for us.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, is it a fair assessment what Bezos is saying that putting them together that's a misdirection? I kind of think they do go hand in hand a little bit.
Well, it's not the first rationale I'd come up with for why we need to restructure our corporate taxes. Let me say it that way. Obviously, it's a concern, and there has been some pretty interesting work done in the last couple of months. The Guardian had a pretty good report looking at corporate earnings announcements, corporate earnings reports, and noting that a lot of very large companies in very many sectors are enjoying huge profits and are in some cases making what appear to be sort of discretionary price increases, right? They have the option to keep prices where they are, but instead they're making price increases sort of a profit center for them. So I think, certainly there's some indications that some of the inflation we're seeing might be discretionary, but that isn't sort of the way I would lead into the argument for corporate tax reform. We know that it's vital. We know that it's been long overdue. We know, as we've discussed before, that Congress and then President Trump missed a really important opportunity to fix our corporate tax system back in 2017, and that we desperately need it right now. The main benefit of that is of doing that when we do it isn't going to be some sort of meaningful impact on inflation. The main benefit's going to be that we can pay for the things we want to pay for as a nation.
Yeah, but I look at this, and you listen to these corporate earnings calls. You see the fact that corporate America hasn't been this profitable since the 50s. All of this stuff that's out there, and you go, they're making choices to raise prices. They're making choices not to ramp up production, like they said in the oil industry. They're making choices to create this inflation. We could argue what the rationale is. Is it simply greed and opportunism to line their pockets? Is it because they hate Biden's policies and letting workers organize? We could argue why, but the reality is it's what they're doing. So the response to this, to me, has got to be, okay, if this is your response, our response is a windfall profits tax in this moment to help offset. That seems to be a logical response. How crazy am I?
Not crazy. I think we've seen a number of proposals of various designs just in the last year that would target specific sectors or specific companies that appear to have done really well during the COVID era. Through no special effort they made. They just happen to be in the right sector, or they have a near monopoly on, as is maybe the case with Amazon increasingly. And you want to see companies in this sort of situation pay something approaching the fair tax rate, the 21% statutory rate we have right now. I'd push even further and say, forget about windfall profits. It's important. It's especially egregious right now when we see so many people, clearly suffering from the effects of price increases. Just trying to fill their car with gas is a shocking experience now, let alone going to the grocery store and buying these essentials. But even when and so it really rings false to see companies paying low rates right now. But even during good times, throughout the business cycle, we know that there's this mind-numbing regularity where if you're a profitable Fortune 500 corporation, you got a pretty good shot at getting your tax down to zero,
right?
Just as a regular course of business. That, I think, is what really needs to be fixed. I mean, excess profits, sure. We need to think about why our tax system doesn't appear able to reach everyday profits. As an example, we did a study a couple of years ago looking at, basically most of the business cycle, the entire period from 2008 to 2015. Every company that was in the Fortune 500 during that period and was consistently profitable in the U.S. over that period. And what we found was that as a group, they were paying maybe half the statutory tax rate. But that 40% of the companies we looked at found a way, despite being profitable, to pay zero in at least 1 year during that period. And this is across all economic sectors. It's not like a tech story and a pharma story, although we've heard lots of companies like that. You know, it's Molson Coors, it's Ford, it's all these very conventional across the economy retail folks. And so that is the real problem. We need to get to a place where in any given year, not just in a pandemic year, we have a tax system that can even lay a glove on these hugely profitable, immensely influential corporations and their leaders.
Yeah. Now, back in February, you guys did a report on Amazon where you said that Amazon avoided about $5.2 billion in corporate federal income taxes in 2021. Now, they had a bumper year in 2020, 2021. They should have been paying an enormous amount of tax. And yet, as you pointed out, there's all this way to get away from it. They saved themselves about $5.2 billion. And you've got Bezos now going, well, no, this isn't how you should do it. No, don't tax us. I'm literally dumbfounded by where we are in this moment.
Yeah. Well, certainly apart from the inflation thing, the notion that Bezos would be at all sympathetic to the project of sustainable corporate tax reform is pretty laughable on its face. I mean, to me, the first thing to say about Amazon as a company and about Bezos as a leader, a former CEO, I guess, is that they have raised tax avoidance to a science. Going back to the 90s, they've done it really well for a really long time. They've done it with the federal taxes, state and local taxes. They've done it with the income taxes they're supposed to pay, property taxes, sales taxes. They've learned organizationally to play our tax system like a piñata and to use that as the source of their comparative advantage. I can't think of another company on the planet that is as completely identified with tax avoidance as a profit center as Amazon. And that is all about Jeff Bezos and his influence. So it's pretty rich that he's expressing, even pretending to express support for corporate tax reform.
Because that was their advantage for years, that you didn't pay any sales tax. That's how they, that's how they got the first leg up on all this. And, it goes back to, behind every great billionaire is a great crime. That was really the great crime. And then they took it to, hey, we're going to do hyper lobbying. You look at the H2Q stuff where they were running around the country, having, every municipality in this country giving them demographic data and local data and all this information in the hopes that they were going to land a facility that they were never going to get. Those facilities were always going to end up in either New York or the Washington, D.C. area. They were never going to go to Dubuque. They were never going to Pittsburgh. They were never going to Cleveland. It was never happening. But what we did is we gave them all kinds of free research that the taxpayers paid for in the hopes of possibly landing this gem of a facility that was nothing but a wish and a hope and a prayer.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And, and it definitely comes back to this sort of discretionary idea we are talking about with price increases. Amazon's U.S. income last year was $35 billion, on which they paid a 6% federal tax rate. In the 4 years of what I'll call the Trump tax era, since the 2017 tax cuts took effect, the company's made almost $80 billion in the U.S. and has paid $4 billion in tax on that, 5.1% tax rate. They have the cash on hand, both Amazon as a company and now Bezos as an individual, to do whatever they want in terms of expansion, capital investment, HQ2, HQ5, right? Yeah. I mean, they could do it all. And the notion that tax incentives were ever going to be instrumental in deciding where he was going to build what he wanted to build was laughable on his face.
Yeah. And we gave him the money. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Matthew Gardner. Matthew's a senior fellow at the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. ITEP.org is their website if you want to check out the work that they do there. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, because I've been saying we've given these corporations all of this money. In fact, we've given them so much in the way of tax breaks that they have more money than they know what to do with. The argument it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, the argument was we're going to give them all of this tax money back so that they're the smart ones. They know what to do with it. They're going to invest in new facilities, new equipment, and new opportunities to build more capacity, to hire more people, all this stuff. It was supposed to be the snowball rolling downhill so the economy, the pie gets bigger. And in the end, we, the little working peons, we benefit because there'll be more jobs. Explain to me how it's possible that they've run out of capacity and ideas when all they seem to be doing is buying back their stocks and enriching themselves, because that seems to me like they're saying, yeah, we've got so much, we don't know what to do with it. We've got no more productive use for this money than buying back stock. It seems like a surrender to me.
Yeah. Well, and of course you can imagine worse things they could do with their money than buying back stock. At least the shareholders get rich. But
no. See, I argue a better use for it would be just putting it in a giant pit and lighting it on fire, because at least we'll get warm from it. At least the working people of this country would get some benefit from it. I don't care about the wealthy industrial shareholders who've gotten their pockets lined. I don't care about the billionaire class that our lack of opportunity, lack of education, lack of healthcare opportunities have been taken from us. I don't care about them. They're right. Well-heeled, well taken care of. They got their lobbyists. I'm worried about the single mother who can't figure out how to put formula in her child. I'm worried about the veteran who's homeless. I'm worried about the working family that's struggling. I'm worried about the people like me in my neighborhood who are worried about their kids going to college. I'm worried about those folks. I'm not worried about Bezos or Gates or Musk or any of them. They'll be fine. It's the rest of us, Matt.
Right. And, in advance of the 2017 tax cuts, some pretty explicit promises were made about how it wouldn't be about stock buybacks. Folks like us were saying sensibly, a lot of economists were, that at a time when companies are already sitting on record stockpiles of cash and profits, that if they wanted to make capital investments, they were in a position to do so if they saw the demand for their products. And if they weren't making those investments, it was because they wouldn't have made any sense to make them. So, that was what sensible people were saying at the time. And you just had these pie in the sky promises, the same sort of promises we've been hearing since the Reagan supply side tax cuts of 1981, about how if you just unleash the private economy by giving more money to these already rich companies, we'd see just a wave of new capital investment. It's never happened before, and it didn't happen this last time around. Yeah. All indications are, as you point out, that the main effect was stock buybacks. The capital investment was growing before the tax cuts. It kept growing for a while after the tax cuts, but you'd really be hard pressed to see some kind of meaningful effect where the tax cuts actually unleashed anything like the wave of investment, the wave of prosperity, or the wave of job growth and salary growth that was promised ahead of time. So yeah, it was pretty clearly a bad idea at the time, and in retrospect, it appears to be a real missed opportunity, because we had leverage in the sense for corporate tax reform in 2017, in the sense that there were two things that people agreed on where it needed to be remedied about our tax system. One was that at 35%, our rate on paper was clearly higher than what most other countries had. The other was that the reason we had that was because we taxed so little of U.S. profits. Something like half of all the profits reported by big companies every year go untaxed. And so when you have a skinny tax base, you need a higher tax rate to make up for it. The sensible strategy of reform would have been to broaden the base, get to a place where we're taxing all business income. And that makes it easier to sustainably lower the tax rate. In 2017, we answered all the easy questions. How far do we want to cut the tax rate down to 21%, which is what Trump pushed through, without really answering any of the difficult questions about how to get companies to pay the statutory rate on their income. That's why we're still seeing the Amazons of the world paying now a quarter of the statutory tax rate in the first 4 years of the Trump era.
Yeah, and we wonder why Main Street's getting clobbered. And this is where I talk to my Chamber of Commerce friends on the local level. You're getting clobbered by these big behemoths. you're getting clobbered by these monsters who can hire teams of attorneys to avoid the taxes that you have to pay. This is that moment where we should be talking about breaking up some of these monsters. You want to know about our supply chain issues? It's got a lot to do with consolidation. You want to know why there's no baby formula on the shelves? It's because you got 4 companies who represent 90% of the market. You want to know why meat prices are through the roof? It's because you got a handful of companies that represent the vast majority of the market. You want to know if food prices are up? You got a handful of companies that control the vast majority of the market. This is the problem of our moment and of our day. And I look at somebody like Bernanke, Ben Bernanke, the former Fed Reserve chairman, saying, oh, we're in the moment of stagflation. This is coming back. I see this. And I'm going, I don't know that I'm willing to go there yet. I want to know who's the next generation of Teddy Roosevelt. Who's going to start busting out these trusts? I want to know who the next Harry Truman is. I want some commissions finding out what about these profiteers who are screwing the consumers over. I want to start using our government as a hammer instead of something that just gets beat up all the time.
Yeah, and I think you've put your finger there on. I'm not going to make any forecast about whether Bernanke is right about stagflation. I threw away my crystal ball in 2016 for all purposes, but I think you've put your finger on part of the problem, which you mentioned the baby formula industry, which it's not an oligopoly, but it's pretty darn close. The more you have these industries facing consolidation, and we're seeing it everywhere, across every sector of the economy, the more you have consolidation, the more pricing power we're giving companies. And, Amazon's the extreme example of this, of course. But, when you don't have real competition, that makes it easier for companies to jack up their prices at a time like this, not because they're facing higher costs, but because they have sort of a smokescreen to do so.
Because they can.
That, I think, is the kernel of truth behind what, to get back to our original question, what President Biden was tweeting about the other day, this idea of a linkage between inflation and corporate taxes. When we don't even try to tax the profits of the biggest and most profitable companies around, especially when they're companies like Amazon that have made a lifestyle choice out of crowding out brick and mortar retailers over, increasingly taking control of the entire retail sector. That's putting an awful lot of price power in the hands of a very small number of CEOs. And yes, if we have a corporate tax system that works, and that has the effect of maybe not breaking up the monopolies, breaking up the oligopolies, but having more of a level playing field between smaller retailers and the bigger companies like Amazon, that is going to be helpful in the long run for all of us, for our economy, for our capacity to buy things at the grocery store in an affordable way.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Matthew, I appreciate the time. Great stuff as always. Keep up the great work. I hope folks will take a look at the website, itep.org. Matthew Gardner is a senior fellow over at the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. Make sure you check out their site. Matthew, appreciate the time, man.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day we lost one of the giants of the U.S. labor movement, A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph spent his life working for black workers and the cause of labor. He organized the first national black union to be recognized by the American Federation of Labor, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The fight for union recognition took 12 years, and the porters signed their first contract in 1937. Randolph went on to lead the effort to desegregate war industries and armed services during and after World War II. He was one of the leading organizers of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, one of the most memorable actions of the Civil Rights Movement. He also worked tirelessly to break down discrimination within the labor movement. He was elected the first black vice president of the AFL-CIO in 1955. Randolph's dedication to the cause of labor was summed up when he said, quote, "The essence of trade unionism is social uplift. The labor movement has been the haven for the dispossessed, the despised, the neglected, the downtrodden, the poor." But Randolph also consistently declared that no movement for social justice can be complete unless it is also inclusive. While organizing for the desegregation of the war industries during World War II, Phillips argued, quote, "Equality is the heart and essence of democracy, freedom and justice, equality of opportunity in industry, in labor unions, schools and colleges, government, politics, and before the law. There must be no dual standard of justice, no dual rights, privileges, duties, or responsibilities of citizenship. No dual forms of freedom." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Quick shout out to the workers out in Los Angeles, members of SEIU Local 721. Their members won the largest general salary increase in LA County history. Good on them. Landmark 3-year agreement. They said one of the biggest 1-year general salary increases, a 5.5% increase, plus a over $1,300 signing bonus. That impressive. And this is why you organize. And for me, if you want to deal with inflation, you want to deal with how we make this not such an issue for workers, we increase their wages. We give them the right to collectively bargain and fight for better wages, hours, conditions, so that, look, nobody likes going to the gas station. My son's learning to drive, and we've got to do, I think it's 60 hours of driving. And I sat down and I started doing the math on how much 60 hours of him behind the wheel is now going to cost me. And I'm going, the 15 miles to a gallon, 60 miles an hour. Started doing all this math and cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. We filled up, it was $93 to fill up the truck. And I'm going, I don't know that I can afford this. I think you're going to have to walk. Nobody likes it. Nobody, and look, everyone's angry and rightfully so. But again, where I go to, misplaced anger. If our wages were keeping up with the cost of inflation, if our wages kept up to where $93, wasn't, our entire week's salary for some people, it wouldn't be as hard to swallow. If we were taxing these oil companies at a pace, and this is where my belief structure is. Back in the old days, back in the golden age of the economy, back in the 50s and 60s, the corporate tax rate was in the 50% range. They had a really high tax rate. So they didn't give out huge compensation to CEOs. In fact, average CEO to worker pay was like 20-1, as where it's like 300-400 to 1 now. In some places, 1,000 to 1. So they used that money more efficiently. They used it to reinvest in their businesses. That is the right way to go about things. We're at a moment right now where corporate America is literally telling us, we don't know what to do with all the money you're giving us. We have no productive use for the money other than to buy back our shares and enrich ourselves. So we've given them this resource that we used to use to build roads and bridges and invest in education and healthcare and opportunities and pay our bills. We used to use that money in a variety of ways. And you can go back to the 50s and you can look at, what we invested in, a highway system that was second to none globally. We invested in our people, housing for GIs, education, you name it. We invested in it. That money's not there anymore because we gave it to, the creation of a billionaire class. It's time. It's time for us to wake up to the reality that we need to claw that back. If you've got no productive use for it, we've got uses for it. We can make lives better. Your life, my life, the lives of the working class. We can make it better. We can. You and me. That simple.
Shows us yet again that the very survival of the reef is at stake.
Australia's Great Barrier Reef hit with another mass bleaching event. Global warming a key factor in the emergence of new diseases.
Oh, great.
Plus,
water officials warn if we get to a Tier 3 shortage, hard decisions will have to be made.
Arizona and California move to enact more severe drought restrictions.
All of those hard decisions and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There really is no alternative here if we're to see a future for the reef and all the industries, the jobs, and everything that depend on it to be bringing our emissions down much faster than we are at the moment and move beyond fossil fuels and give the reef a fighting chance.
All he is saying is give reefs a chance. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, this has been getting worse and worse every year, year after year. Bad news for the Great Barrier Reef.
Indeed. In Australia, more than 90% of the coral reefs surveyed on the Great Barrier Reef suffered some amount of bleaching during the Southern Hemisphere summer, according to Australian government scientists. Coral bleaching is a stress response when the corals are effectively cooked by rising ocean temperatures driven by man-made global warming. If conditions don't improve, coral can die. Scientists say the bleached coral is still alive and they hope most of the reef may recover. It is the fourth mass bleaching event in 7 years, but the first to occur under cooler La Nina conditions in the Pacific Ocean.
And why is it a bad thing if the Great Barrier Reef dies, other than, of course, the tourism and so forth?
Well, because coral reefs are nurseries for nearly a third of all marine species.
Oh, so that's all. As the coral reef goes, so goes the oceans.
Simon Bradshaw, research director of Australia's Climate Council, warned that the reef cannot take much more.
And the science is clear that its future depends on very aggressive, determined emissions cuts this decade from Australia and from the world. If we're to have any shot of a living reef in future, we have to be bringing emissions down very quickly through the 2020s.
Reef scientists also accused Australia's conservative, coal-promoting Morrison administration of trying to bury the findings amid a contentious national election. Also not great news, a new analysis published by the journal Nature has confirmed a link between man-made global warming and the spread of disease, concluding that climate change will cause new diseases like COVID-19 to emerge more frequently. The researchers say that climate change and habitat destruction are pushing species into densely populated areas, particularly in Asia and Africa, in turn increasing the chances of cross-species transmission of viruses known as zoonotic spillover, which can lead to new epidemics.
Well, given that so many billionaires made so much money off the COVID pandemic, now you're just encouraging them to make things worse, frankly.
Here in the U.S., more water cutbacks are ahead for the Southwest, which is now in the grip of the deepest drought in 1,200 years, with major reservoirs at record low levels. In Arizona, water officials this week warned that the state will likely have to enact its next phase of drought restrictions as early as August, triggering even more cuts to the amount of water Arizona receives from the Colorado River. Top state water official Ted Cook in a public meeting said residents must do more to conserve water by eliminating non-critical uses now to avoid deeper cuts later.
Most of the water use is outside the home. It's in the yard, it's pools, it's plants, it's lawns, it's things like that. So this is where we have some capacity to deal with the needs to do further reductions.
In California, the city of Los Angeles will now limit outdoor watering to just 2 days a week beginning in June. Officials had called on residents to voluntarily cut water use 15% to conserve supplies, but urban water use across California increased by nearly 19% in March.
It increased in March.
Yes.
Oops.
But some good news. The Biden administration on Wednesday confirmed that it has canceled 3 offshore oil and gas lease sales for the Gulf of Mexico and the coast of Alaska that had been scheduled to take place, and that likely ends all federal offshore lease sales through the end of the year. The Interior Department cited lack of interest from oil companies as well as legal obstacles limiting time to hold the sales.
Just more cancel culture.
And finally, a new analysis by the UN International Energy Agency finds that renewable energy deployment hit a new global record in 2021 despite supply chain disruptions and other speed bumps as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and the world is on track to break that record in 2022.
Finally, a record we're happy to break.
Yeah.
For much more on all of these reports and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking with authors about the idea of activism. You know, on this program, we've been talking about people standing up for themselves, fighting back, organizing, taking to the streets, even though, you know, thanks to Ron DeSantis, in Florida, you're not going to be able to go protesting in front of, you know, any Supreme Court justice's house, or anyone's, evidently. No more of that, because no more protesting. That's going to be, I guess, the Florida way, coming very soon to a DeSantis desk near you. But, you know, this is the moment that we're in, where reclaiming that worker power, reclaiming that empowered citizenry, this is how we move forward. And I love the fact that there are so many books now coming out talking about how we do that, and a lot of them are, recently we basically talked about a cookbook of activism, but some of them are exercises in fiction, and I think novels are important too, telling stories, especially ones that are based in personal experience. I said this one was, like the old Joel Friday, with the names have been changed to protect, well, I don't know, but we're going to find out. That's why I've asked Larry Miller to come talk with us. He is the co-author of Standing Up, Tales of Struggle. He has written this along with his wife, Elaine Bravo, who you heard last Monday on the program. And if you want to check that out, you can check out the podcast at our website. Larry, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. I'm enjoying being here.
So, I look at, like I said, there's a lot of books coming out right now around, labor organizing, around, citizens organizing. And yours is a little bit different, because this isn't, this then that kind of, recipe book. This is it's a story. It's a love story, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We believe at the heart of this work has to be love, has to be trust, and has to be building relationships. And that includes between me and my partner, Ellen, but also many of the partners that we built, partnerships we built over the past 50 years in all the work that we've done.
And I assume that you're obviously Nick Turner in the book, and Ellen is the Sophie character, or at least based kind of on, right?
She's pretty spot on with Sophie. I'm trying to be the better Nick. I'm working on it. But the opening stories, most of the book, I mean, there are parts of it that we constructed a certain way to be able to just tell the story. But the most of the stories are true to experience. The opening story at Grady Hospital was me at Grady Hospital, and it was the story came from an essay that I had written, and we decided to turn it and a whole variety of essays that I had, along with a number of short stories that Ellen had, into fiction. I couldn't remember a lot of the details that happened 50 years ago, but I knew the gist of how we organized and who the people were.
Yeah, so you got away from having to remember all of the facts, but told the gist of the story in a very entertaining, kind of informative way, and in a way that I think is empowering as well. The kind of things I think in this moment we need, kind of a worker centric, organizing model that it's the workers that are the heroes. We don't see that too much anymore.
Well, my whole life, it's been the working class and the individual, the working class as a whole, but the individuals that I've interacted with that have been the heroes. I'm not big for the, of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo plays for the Bucks. I'm kind of a fan of his, but my heroes are really in the factories and in the communities.
Yeah, you mentioned you described the book as being about the deliberately unheard. That's an interesting way of framing that. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's an amazing writer. Her name is Mbolo Mbule. She wrote a book called How Beautiful We Are, and she talked about the deliberately unheard. People say to us, you're raising the voice of the voiceless. Well, the workers have a voice. The issue is being able to organize and project that voice, and to be given a megaphone from a movement, not from individuals, but from a movement. And that's been our perspective, is that people know what their oppression is, they know what their exploitation is, and our participation was to be part of that organizing community. When I watch what happened at the Amazon warehouse in Staten Island that won its victory. In fact, we're going to be interviewed when we go to New York and do an in-person presentation of our book. One of the leaders of that organizing effort is going to be leading the discussion. Those are the people we believe in. They learned how to organize on the ground and organize from the bottom up and have those relationships and build that trust. And that's the sort of thing that we want to project in the fiction that we're writing.
Yeah, I mean, this is, in your 50 years, this is old school kind of organizing that you're talking about. The stuff, as I talk about my grandparents' generation, they built. It's the community of organizing, not just, we're going to whip a couple of organizers on you and then they disappear. It's actually being a part of the fabric of that community, which, and I agree with you, they did what I thought was the model that you have to go through. They talked to individuals, they were part of that community, they were the workers in the facility, which is why I think they were successful.
Yes, that's exactly where we're coming from. In fact, we give a number of examples. The stand-up that happened at a in the book that the book is named after, that happened at an answering center. It actually was modeled from an event, a stand-up that happened at TWA, which is no longer an airlines, but happened at an answering center for TWA, and that was the model of that chapter that we wrote about. But you also in the book. You have students organizing, you have union organizing, you have just a whole variety of examples of what it takes on a daily level. And the thing for me, I became, because of my involvement in the anti-war movement as a young kid, I was not going to go to Vietnam. I was going to refuse. I ended up going into Vista and ended up being assigned to the Black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, which is where the massacre had happened 45 years before me. So I became educated by a community that had seen the worst, the most brutality that you could see in American history. And from there, I had made the decision that I was going to move into different areas of organizing. And when I got to Atlanta, I ended up at Grady Hospital, and in the article, Nick becomes part of an organizing effort. He's not like some savior that comes in. It is, in fact, it's the workers in that laundry that coalesce and show Nick how to organize and how to take his skills and take advantage of them.
Yeah, and in fact, you talk a lot about dealing with those obstacles and of race and gender and all of those things that that I think actually are topics that have to be discussed and understood.
Absolutely. If you're looking at what's happening today, race and misogyny are at the center of how are we going to advance. What the horrific thing that just happened in Buffalo, the horrific decision that's about to be made by the Supreme Court. These are the things that have to be turned around and taken. We have to take these setbacks and these attacks, and we have to turn them into progress. It's at the center of everything that we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. You tie all this stuff together, and look, you've led an interesting life. If this is almost autobiographical, you've led an interesting life of activism, and it's something that that should be studied, and because the different periods over the last 50 years of how things have changed, how things have progressed, but also how they haven't.
Yes. Every time we take a step forward, there's huge resistance, and whenever there's a movement to make things better, there's huge resistance. We see that with the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's as the Black Lives Matter movement slowed down, and that's not something it's not going to stay that way. The Black Lives Matter movement is going to advance and make a huge difference in this country. But as it has slowed down over this last year, it left a number of cities with some real organization. Other cities, not so much. But we are going to see advances in our organizing. The issue is, are we going to be able to come together? Are we going to see intersectionality between all of the movements? The LGBTQ movement, the women's movement, Black liberation, the immigrant rights movement. These are significant. There was a demonstration on May Day here in Milwaukee led by Voces de la Frontera, 5,000 people, and they have pulled out as many as 75,000 people here in Milwaukee to demonstrate. These are things that are not going to go away. The issue that we are trying to contribute to in the book is to show that all of these things are connected. There's intersectionality, and we have to become a united movement for justice in this country.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Larry Miller. He is the co-author of Standing Up, Tales of Struggle. You can check out the website, hardballpress.com, where you can get a copy of it. We'll also get links out on social media, how you can check this out. You talk about all the different groups, and one of the things that I've said for a very long time is, we do this to ourselves. We section ourselves off, so we're easily divided and pitted against each other. And the hope is that eventually we all come together. But when you're looking at all of these diverse groups, especially in this moment, what happened in Buffalo, what's happened in a lot of places across this country with the hate machine we see on the right, how do you go about allaying the fears of I'm not going to go the extremists, but those people who are who don't know, who are afraid of both sides? How do you allay some of those fears? And is this book part of maybe the help to get to there, if that makes sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. We have to be good and figure out ways to talk to the broad numbers of people, not just the choir. We have to be able to go out into communities. We as white organizers have to be able to go out into white communities and have discussion and talk about what is in their interest. The interest of white workers in Wisconsin is not the same interest as the 1%. It is their interest is in unionism. Their interest is in unity. Their interest is in fighting racism, so that the trust within the working class can be built. And I know that's been a discussion forever, but we don't have a choice. The issue is, if we're going to succeed at this time in this effort, we have to come up with new and interesting ways to build unity. You know, I don't know if Rick, if you recall Gary Tyler. He was a young African-American man in New Orleans that was accused of murder and given the death penalty. I was part of a group of, this was in 1976. I went to New Orleans with a group of people. There were about 10 African Americans and 10 white organizers. The African American organizers went in the black community. We white organizers went into the white community. And I remember this discussion. We came on this one porch. The person that was working with me, we came to this porch, and there were these two guys, and we started a conversation with them and explained who Gary Tyler was and what was going on. And in the course of the discussion, they said that they had identity with the KKK because they said the Klan spoke for them. No one else did. The elite did not. And we had a long discussion with them. I was a little nervous. I was in my early 20s. I'm sitting here talking to two guys that identify with the Klan. But we chose to have that discussion with them. And before we left, they signed the petition and said that they would spread the word about Gary Tyler. And the reason they said they would do is because of their disdain for the police and how the police had treated them. It was in their interest. Now, this was just one situation on a short term, and it wasn't like they joined the movement, but it showed me that people can be moved, but the work has to be done. The discussions have to happen. The organizing has to be done.
So maybe there is hope, and hopefully out of the book comes some of those conversations and some of that realization. The book Standing Up, Tales of Struggle by Elaine Bravo and Larry Miller. Make sure you check it out. We'll get links out on social media how you can get a copy of this. Last question I've got for you. What's the ultimate hope out of this? I know everyone starts off writing a book with great hopes and dreams. What's your hope and dream for this?
My thing is that I would love for there to be discussion groups and for it to be a contribution to the discussion. I'd like some young folks around to be actually discussing this issue of activism and organizing. I'd like to see this go on. I'm also an editor of Rethinking Schools, which is focused on teachers, and we're organizing discussion groups as an organization all over the country, and they're very successful. They're focused on teachers and union folks in schools, but I want to see this sort of thing broaden out into the community and to even to small workplaces. I see that people working in coffee shops all over the country are organizing unions. We just had one organized here in Milwaukee, Colectivo. 200 employees just voted for a union for their shop here in Milwaukee. And I would hope that it would contribute to that movement.
And help give people some lessons and some opportunities to learn and discuss good stuff. Larry, I appreciate the time. Great bit of writing. I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate you having us on. Good
stuff. Larry Miller, co-author of Stand Up, Tales of Struggle. Like I said, we'll get links out on social media where you can check it out. Their website, hardballpress.com, where you can pick it up. Let's take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Yeah, I hope folks will take a look at the book Standing Up, Tales of Struggle, written by Elaine Bravo and Larry Miller. Hardballpress.com, the website, if you want to check that out. Interesting bit of writing. Like it a lot. It is an interesting bit. As my wife is correcting me again. What did I say? Crummin'. I don't think I did. I'm going back to check the tapes on that. But anyway, got an email from Anita who said, I just told my cousin in California, she's in Virginia, and protesting in D.C., who is struggling with numerous candidates for governor and senator. At this point, we can only hope to change the Democratic Party after we vote the most popular Dem. We must vote in Dems and pressure them once they are in. Kick Manchin out of the party now. That can only really happen once you have more Democratic senators in the Senate. Right now, you need Manchin to hold on to control of the Senate, and hopefully, come November, Democrats hold on to the Senate. And I'm still hopeful that people come out in November and they hold on to the House as well, and we get some things done. If Republicans take the House, it's 2 years of bickering and fighting and nothing gets done, which means 2 more years of struggle and suffer. 2 more years of nothing. And that means 2 more years of doing nothing on climate change, 2 more years of getting, very little done on improving education or health care or anything, because the Republicans don't have an agenda. There's nothing there. There's no policy there. Their policy is destroy. They are destroyers. That's their thing. And they'll tell you that. They don't believe in government. They don't believe government should do anything. They believe hand it over to the private sector. Let the private sector do anything. And I keep coming back to all of the things that we've handed to them hasn't worked out the way it was sold to us. Ask anyone who lives in a city where we sold off the parking authority. Is it working better? Is it more efficient? Is it cheaper? The answer is no. In fact, it's a lot more restrictive. I know in one of the big towns near us, if you want to have a parade or if you want to have an event, you've got to pay 24 hours of parking around the clock, night before, night of, so that they don't lose any profit. You got to pay them because you got to protect their profits. That's not what the systems are for. But it's what we've allowed to have happen because we had short-term thinkers that we've elected. And yeah, I'm with Anita. We do need to, in this moment, elect more Democrats that we can move in our direction. One of the things I like about Joe Biden is I think he's somebody that if enough people come together and push, he'll listen. I never thought that about Donald Trump. Never thought that at all. But I think Biden will. And it's incumbent on us to organize, to come together, and to push for those things that we want and demand. One of the things we're hearing now is the student loan stuff. I'm not opposed to doing something on student loan debt. I think we need to. I think we need to do a lot on when we fund higher education. We need to fix the problem that was created over decades of conservative ideology. Of conservative, let's shift costs off the back of the taxpayers and onto the back of the individual, off the back of corporate America and onto the back of the individual, because you got to have skin in the game. This is that moment where those policy ideas that they brought us, that conservatives brought us, this is the reaction. This is what's happened, and it's harming individuals across this country. No, Republicans love to talk about, Democrats want to pick winners and losers. Well, they picked winners. The billionaire class. They picked winners. The CEO class. Corporate America are the winners. The losers are the rest of us. And this is where we better wake up to the reality that it's not your neighbor to be afraid of. It's not your neighbor to be angry at. It's those folks up in the ivory towers. It's those people way up in the boardrooms looking down at us. It's those people making economic decisions that harm our families. That's where we should be looking. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. If you missed any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss an episode. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day we lost one of the giants of the U.S. labor movement, A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph spent his life working for black workers and the cause of labor. He organized the first national black union to be recognized by the American Federation of Labor, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The fight for union recognition took 12 years, and the porters signed their first contract in 1937. Randolph went on to lead the effort to desegregate war industries and armed services during and after World War II. He was one of the leading organizers of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, one of the most memorable actions of the Civil Rights Movement. He also worked tirelessly to break down discrimination within the labor movement. He was elected the first black vice president of the AFL-CIO in 1955. Randolph's dedication to the cause of labor was summed up when he said, quote, "The essence of trade unionism is social uplift. The labor movement has been the haven for the dispossessed, the despised, the neglected, the downtrodden, the poor." But Randolph also consistently declared that no movement for social justice can be complete unless it is also inclusive. While organizing for the desegregation of the war industries during World War II, Phillips argued, quote, "Equality is the heart and essence of democracy, freedom and justice, equality of opportunity in industry, in labor unions, schools and colleges, government, politics, and before the law. There must be no dual standard of justice, no dual rights, privileges, duties, or responsibilities of citizenship. No dual forms of freedom." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Mitch McConnell, the sour old goose who heads the Senate Republican caucus, had a hissy fit when the news leaked out that American women are about to have their most fundamental constitutional right taken from them by a cabal of Supreme Court judges. What made Mitch twitch, of course, was not the bad news for women, but the leak. He huffed that revealing the right-wing court's scheme to the public was a stunning breach, spewing that it's an attack on the independence of the Supreme Court. Mitch, the so-called Supremes have been meeting behind closed doors specifically to plot an all-out attack on the independence of some 170 million women to control their own bodies. Why aren't you opposing the secrecy rather than supporting the court's subversion of women's liberty? Perversely, the entire Republican leadership is outraged by the leak rather than the attack on women. Right-wing blowhard Ted Cruz, for example, yapped that informing the public, quote, will do lasting damage to the integrity of the court. Ted, you and your ideological ilk annihilated the court's integrity and its legitimacy when you stacked it with a covey of corporate-coddling partisan hacks like Alito, Barrett, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Then came Senator Mike Lee of Utah, a Trump acolyte, ludicrously blathering that the leak of the judicial plan is despicable. Why? Well, he explained to us commoners, the court, quote, is not a political body. If ignorance is bliss, Mike must be ecstatic. The GOP majority on this court is so immersed in its own partisan biases that it is routinely ruling against workers, the environment, women, voting rights, local communities, and democracy itself. This is Jim Hightower saying, no surprise then that the public trust in the integrity of these arbiters of justice is crashing. If the court won't respect our democratic ideals, the people won't respect the court.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Brian sent me an email during the break with an NBC poll that shows that the Democrats' net favorability rating not good, -19, But the Republicans aren't much better. -11 Kamala Harris, -17 Donald Trump, -16. And the argument is Democrats are really unpopular because inflation. And you go, yeah, it is. That's why time to start pointing the finger in the right direction. Let's quick go to the phone lines. I got Gary on line 1. Gary from Indianapolis. Gary, what's on your mind, brother? How are you?
Yes, Minneapolis. I'm doing good. How are you doing? I was just trying to say, they deregulated all the corporate rich in this country, and then they switched it so the corporate and the wealthy regulated us. If you're a worker, you don't have a right to union. If you want to vote, they don't want you to vote. They stop you from voting. That's all regulation, so they can keep grabbing all the money. And I'd just like to add, when I was a kid, young, in the 50s and 60s, we had Keynesian economics. You were talking some of that stuff tonight, where the little people, the small working person, has enough money to go spend. The corporations will hire, the business will hire more people, and then when you don't spend, they lay them off, and it keeps going and going and going. That's what happened in the 30s and the Depression, and we're headed that way again if we don't stop these guys.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We got to prime the pump, keep it going. But what happened is, if you listen to the right wing, is we gave $1,400 to you, Gary, and you caused inflation.
Yeah. So, I don't know. They just stick their money in the Cayman Islands or Swiss banks, and it don't do any good. If we have it, we spend it, and then there's other ways to stop inflation. I think have enough jobs and supply. I think the supply, a lot of that was just jobs overseas and Ukraine and the oil.
I'm right there with you.
So, and the oil corporations, they're making money like bundles. The rich are still getting off like bandits now, so they don't have to charge so much.
Yep. No, you're spot on, Gary. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Good night.
You as well. Thanks so much. No, I think Gary's spot on. The reality is as we said earlier, they're gouging us because they can. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day and maybe why the Democrats are so unpopular and how maybe they turn that around. I've asked my good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, what do you make of this NBC poll? I know we're months away from the election. The net favorability ratings are bad. Democrats are -19, Republicans are 11. Is this all part of the handicapping of the game, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, it is an NBC poll, and people are going to look at that. And I say that because you get this too. You get all kinds of polls from candidates, et cetera. But this one is talking about the right track and the wrong track. Now, frankly, the Republicans at this point in time are lucky, and that could change. But I believe, Rick, they're lucky because they don't have, a set agenda. They don't have anything that they're promoting. They're against this and that. They have internal warfare. Marjorie Three Names, as you like to call her, which I do too. She drives McConnell out of his mind, and he has to clarify things about Rick Scott. They've got all these internal problems, and the number one problem they have, which is the former president. But on top of that, you would think that they would be completely in the tank. And in a sense, if you look at that poll, they are tanking, but the Democrats, again, are not, doing as well, quote, as the Republicans. And again, I'm confused this, but the Republicans aren't doing well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So both parties are in a precarious situation.
Yeah.
I think with the Democratic side, they need to gin up, I won't call it attack engines, I'll call it clarification engines. They need to do that. And not be so obsessed with Trump, because he loves it. He likes the combat. He gets his name out there. He hits back. But to focus on the difference between the two political parties and the difference of what's being attempted to be done in regards to people by the Democrat Party. And I think they have to focus on it, over and over and over again. And also get to the heart. And again, I know abortion is a huge issue and other issues that are out there, the shootings, all of these things going on, and inflation and gasoline, et cetera. But I think that the Democratic side needs to develop and they've got time to do it, a working people's mantra. And what are they going to do? How are they going to improve the basic human condition of men and women and families in this country?
No,
and hammer it.
I think the president did bring that up when in his conversation about how he's going to address inflation. Now, we both agreed that the ultra mega thing was not a great. At least I didn't think it was a great idea. Because you're basically giving them something that they're going to lean into, and I got pushed back. No, we're going after the people who might be convincible. I'm going. There aren't many of those left. You've got to rile your base. You've got to give them a reason to come out and vote for you. And I think when he started talking about lowering prescription drug prices, when he started talking about getting workers the ability to organize and collectively bargain for better wages, hours, conditions, when he started talking about tuition, some of the stuff around student debt and restructuring education, and that's the stuff making working people's lives better, restructuring the economy in a way that works for us. I think that's the winning message. It's it goes back to the James Carville bit. It's the economy, stupid. You got to figure out how to make people think that, hey, you're trying to help me put food on the table and keep a roof over our head.
Right. And I also think that, look, Build Back Better failed. We all know it failed. We know why it failed. We know the 2 votes missing. Okay, I understand that. But there can be still pieces of it, versions of it that can be hammered out and, it put the Republicans on the line, but on top of it, stand for something as the Democratic side. And so I think that can still happen. And again, the messaging of the president, you're right, the president launched into what he needed to, and now that messaging needs to be consistent with the House and the Senate and the political powers, to be. And also attempt to look at the bigger picture. And again, I can't, harp enough on working people. You look at the election here in Ohio, and I could be completely dead wrong, but if you look at Tim Ryan's message, he is just beating that drum about workers and China and working rights and the average working man and woman in this country and the families, and he's beating that drum. And he's running against a guy that, he wrote Hillbilly Elegy, and he's a wealthy, high-tech guy that, went to California. So I think that those types of definitions are important, and I really do.
No, I think it is important that you hammer on that, and I think the Ryan way is the right way, but it was the Sherrod Brown way, and which again, the reason I'm hoping Sherrod Brown runs for president in 2024, because I think you need somebody who can have those conversations, who has that working class ethic, that those working class chops, that can go out into those rural communities and claw some of those votes back. And I know, no, they're all racist. No, they're not. These are people who, not all of them, a lot, some, sure, absolutely. But you gotta make it in their economic interest to go, hey, we're going to give you a shot.
And there's another base that the Democratic side needs to really closely look at. And I don't want to offend anybody here, but it's not all about a border or a wall. And that's the Latino population. And I say that because it's not all about immigration. Yes, that's an important issue, but if you'll notice, and this is going to be key in House and Senate races, Latinos, Republicans are talking to them. Whether the message is genuine or not can be debatable, but they're talking to them. And the Democratic side has to, in tight elections, has to also look at that particular side of a base.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and I fear, because I haven't seen the messaging come out of the DNC that I've been hoping for. I just haven't, and especially in this moment when there's all these attacks that are going on. I mean, there's fertile ground for messaging, especially on Roe, and now over the weekend you had this shooting, this horrific shooting I mean, for me, this is where you tie the Republican Party to white replacement theory. You tie them to this extremist white nationalist theory that look, like Republicans did to Democrats back in November with CRT. You put that on them because it's where that label belongs.
Well, the old messaging of Karl Rove. We used to always say when Karl thought things were down, he pulled out guns, God, and gays. That's what he did.
Yeah.
And as despicable as Rove could be, he would get that mantra out there. Now, the mantra for the Democratic side is going to be different. I'm just saying, though, there's still mantras, and you work them. You have to be aggressive with them, and you have to have the messaging that's out there. And of course, at the appropriate time, getting out the vote. If you don't get out the vote, it's done.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta energize the base.
Have to get the vote out.
Get them out to vote. So, what are your thoughts on the shooting over the weekend? I mean, it's another one of these horrific moments where another white guy goes into a black community with the intent on killing black people, and he ends up walking away unscathed.
Well, this was, of course, it's just brutally disgusting. I mean, the whole thing. And what amazes me the most is, and there was a Washington Post article laying out this, tech, high-tech, what do you call them, rooms he was in. There was a name for this room that he was in, and people would read his manifesto and would read things. And, he left messages out there. And I was just thinking about the flag, red flag laws, and subway shooter the same way. These messages are out there, but it doesn't seem like, we're able to somehow pick up on them and then attempt at least to do something with them. That's just, in my opinion, the issue of, the failure of some of the systems we have to attempt to catch people. Now, the bigger picture is, this guy, and I had never heard of this whole idea and manifesto they had out there about whites being replaced, and all this underground stuff that's out there is just, it's terrible.
You've never heard that?
Never had heard it.
You clearly haven't been listening to Tucker Carlson or to Steve Bannon, because they've been talking about
I plead guilty. I should listen because it's my job to listen to all sides of things to get ideas. But no, I have not heard of that.
No, they've been talking about this for a very long time, this idea that we're bringing in people from other countries and encouraging, birth rates in these minority communities and welfare programs for them and giving them all this stuff so that their numbers will prop up. And we're punishing whites so that, that all of the others will politically take over. And, you look at some of the evangelical Christian groups that have, the messaging, the quiverful movement, the 19 and counting or 20 and counting or 100 and counting or whatever she's up to at this point. There's a movement of those people who they're deliberately having, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20 kids simply for that reason that they keep the majority of good Christian white voters. This mentality's been out there for years.
Well, I mean, I know different mentalities are. I just did not know about this whole official replacers manifests and things. I just had not heard about it till this.
Yeah, well, in your defense, and I will defend you. You're probably not running in many white supremacist circles.
That's true. Never did do it. Haven't done it recently either.
Yeah, the only reason I know about it is I have friends who they track this stuff. That they lead minority groups who they're keenly aware of who their enemies are, and they're sensitive to when that kind of rhetoric gets out. And anytime Tucker Carlson talks about this, and he has talked about it numerous times, this becomes something. And it used to be just dog whistle. Now they're writing freaking manifestos.
I mean, sure, I know racism's out there. I mean, I know all of that. I just did not realize the whole replacers thing, or that Tucker Carlson had been going down that path.
Yeah, No, and look, you had Steve Bannon come out today. I believe it was today on his podcast. Basically doubling down, saying, "No, we're not backing away from this. We're fighting this. We're going to move this forward." What was his exact quote? We're not backing off 1 inch because inclusive nationalism, participatory populism is what's changing this country, and that's what they're freaking out about. It is inclusive nationalism, Bob. If that's not spin, I don't know what is.
Right. I mean, I know about Miller that worked for Trump, and he had worked for Congressman Shadegg in Arizona when I was in the House, and Miller was a personal one-man destruction show. He was biased against anybody, of any form of color, and didn't want anybody into the United States, period, And so I knew that, he was in the White House, and they were, doing things like that. I mean, that I did know, that his policies were obviously, racial and absurd.
Now, the more I'm thinking about this phrase is, wow. I mean, it's up right up there with military intelligence or jumbo shrimp. Mm-hmm. Inclusive nationalism.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's some linguistic gymnastics, if there ever was.
Isn't it, though?
Wow. But, here again, you look at this shooting, and I know it's not the guns. I'm told the guns don't kill people. It's people. Well, you had that shooting. You had one at a flea market in Texas. You had a Chinese guy shoot at Taiwanese people in a church in California. You had the shootings in Wisconsin. You had the shootings in Chicago. We got, I guess, pandemic over?
Oh, it's unreal. The amount of violence and shootings. I read an article today. This year alone, we've had 188 up to now mass shootings in America. 188.
See, I saw
Not
201.
Shootings, but that's mass shootings.
Yeah, I saw 201. CNN reported 201.
Okay.
But even 188, that's too many.
It is.
It's crazy.
Terrible.
But again, it's not the guns. But it makes
in fact, today after this happened, I was on the internet because a friend of mine asked me, about countries and mass shootings, and we topped the food cake. We're it.
I guess if you want us to be number one, here's something we're number one at.
That's the only number one we've got that one shouldn't brag about.
Yeah, it's frightful stuff. So the last question I've got is there something that can be done? Do you think, as someone who was a former legislator, is there anything that, or is this hopeless?
Well, I hate to say it, but after the school shootings, I thought something will happen, and with the horrible thoughts of what those little kids faced, being shot and killed, and people, get riled up, and then it subsides. And now it's almost like a numbness in the country. So I'm not, sure what can be done, but obviously there's got to be a closer look at who can, acquire weapons.
Yeah, and I don't know how an 18-year-old kid gets this kind of stuff, but it's incredible to me. But in every one of these shootings, I'm always waiting for that right-wing lunatic to come out and say it's a false flag. And this time did not disappoint. Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers was that person who she has ties to white nationalist groups. She came out and said that she believed it was staged by government agents.
Oh my goodness!
So yay, we got crazy people all abound. But Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Lunacy abound. And congratulations, Wendy. You win the Lunatic Award for the day. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you grab the podcast, share it with your friends. Also, make a comment or two and let me know what you think. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Back after this. think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So, sadly, over the weekend, John Fetterman, Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania and leading Democrat in the Senate primary, had a stroke. And from what I understand, doing okay. From reports that I'm getting, will recover fully. They caught it. They did what needed to be done. Casey sent me an email during the break, said, do you see the Fetterman stroke affecting the Senate race at all? Assuming Fetterman wins the primary, of course. I don't. I think he'll be up and around. From what I'm being told, he's not suffered any cognitive or any function. They're just being hyper cautious. I think he's going to slide through the primary without any question. And I think that if it is Dr. Oz, I don't see I'm hoping there's not going to be much of a question. I'm hoping that the voters of Pennsylvania, look at someone like Dr. Quack, as I call him, and believe he's wholly unacceptable for our state. I think John is a good guy. I think he's a good working class guy with working class values, and I think he will do a great job for our state. But I wish him the best. And we were supposed to have him on, today. That was what we were working on. But the stroke that happened, and I wish him the best, and Giselle and the kids and all of that sad stuff. Finally, you may remember a guy named Kash Patel. He was one of Trump's House Intelligence Committee people. But Kash has got a new book out, The Plot Against the King. It's a children's book published by Brave Books. And it talks all about how the mean people, Democrats, went after the king, King Donald, and the enemy, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, this is a kid's book on how they made up stuff, false claims, how the Steele dossier caused the FBI to investigate and false claims of Russian collusion. Oh boy, we're going to put this on children's reading list. Evidently, this is the goal, but we're banning books across the country. But Brave Books is putting out this giant steaming pile of crud. Now, the basic premise is that it was the Steele dossier that made the FBI look at all of the links between Donald Trump, the campaign, and the Russians, when that is not the truth. When the reality is the FBI began looking at the Trump campaign and all of the links to Trump and the campaign because of George Papadopoulos. That's what it was about. Papadopoulos was the guy who opened his mouth, not Steele. And how do I know this? Because the Republican majority House Intel Committee issued a report on this that said that the FBI opened a counterintelligence investigation into the campaign after receiving information related to advisor George Papadopoulos. He opened his mouth to somebody. That's why, not Steele. And what's interesting is most of the stuff in the Steele dossier hasn't been discredited. The salacious stuff, like the P tape, I don't know if it's not there. We just haven't seen it yet. How do you explain Helsinki? I keep coming back to that. How do you explain Putin walking Trump around like a lapdog? I don't know. I don't know. But hey, look for Cash's book in a trash can near you. Because I am not buying it not even to just take a look at it. If someone wants to send me a review copy, happy to get it. Not going to spend a dime on it. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come